Every payday, numbers pop up on a screen, or maybe a check lands in your hand. It feels simple, instant, and secure. That number represents your work, and you can turn it into groceries, rent, or a night out. It's the engine of our lives. But for most of recorded history, this entire system of coins, paper, and digital transfers simply didn't exist. For thousands of years, people worked, built monuments, and created empires without ever touching a single coin. So, how did a worker in ancient Mesopotamia, one of the first civilizations on Earth, get their due for hauling stones to build a ziggurat? The answer is weirder, more organized, and far more interesting than you might think. And the best part? We have the 5,000-year-old receipts to prove it. When we think of an economy without money, our minds usually jump to one word: barter. You have a chicken, I have a pot. We swap. Simple, right? Well, for a small village, maybe. But for a bustling city like Uruk in Mesopotamia, with tens of thousands of people, simple barter breaks down completely. It's paralyzed by a problem economists call the double coincidence of wants. For a trade to happen, you must have exactly what I want, and I must have exactly what you want at the exact same time and place. Imagine you're a stonemason who has just spent a week carving reliefs for a temple. You're owed payment. But what if your employer, the temple administration, only has huge reserves of grain and wool to offer? You don't need 100 pounds of wool. You need bread for tonight, some fish from the market, and maybe a new pair of sandals. Are you supposed to haul a giant bale of wool to the fishmonger and hope he needs a lifetime supply of yarn? It's inefficient and chaotic. A complex society, a city, simply can't function this way. So, the Mesopotamians didn't rely on simple barter. They invented something far more sophisticated: the payroll. In many parts of ancient Mesopotamia, the heart of the economy wasn't a marketplace. It was the temple and the palace. These massive institutions were the largest landowners and employers. Think of them less as just places of worship and more like the headquarters of a colossal, state-run corporation. Now, this doesn't mean private merchants and household economies didn't exist. They were a vital part of life. But the scale of the temple's operation was enormous. These institutions collected agricultural surplus from across the land. Tons of barley, dates, oil, and textiles poured into their storehouses. This wasn't just hoarding. This was the central bank and the central employer, all in one. The solution to the payment problem was to manage this wealth through a highly organized system of rations. Instead of haphazardly trading goods, the temple paid its thousands of workers, from builders to artisans, with standardized, predictable rations of essential goods. This wasn't a casual handout. This was a wage. And the most important of these wages were food and, most famously, drink. One of the most incredible pieces of evidence we have is a small clay tablet, about 5,000 years old, unearthed in the ancient city of Uruk. Inscribed with an early form of writing called cuneiform, its symbols are simple but clear: a human head eating from a bowl, meaning ration, and a conical jar, meaning beer. Scratches on the tablet indicate the amount. This small piece of clay is often described as the world's oldest known payslip, a record of a worker receiving their daily beer ration. And this wasn't an isolated case. Thousands of similar tablets have been found. Beer wasn't just a happy hour perk. It was a fundamental part of the Mesopotamian diet and economy. The beer they drank was likely thick and porridge-like, a rich source of calories and a reliable source of hydration. It was, in essence, liquid bread. Laborers on huge construction projects received beer as part of their daily compensation. Records even detailed different pay grades. An ordinary laborer might get a couple of liters a day, while higher-ranking officials received more. The system was so ingrained that it appears in their legal texts. The famous Code of Hammurabi, written around 1750 BCA, formalized many practices, setting out compensation for various jobs, sometimes in barley and other times in silver. This system ensured that the state's massive workforce was fed, hydrated, and ready to work every day. The rations were the fuel for the engine of civilization. But people can't live on bread and beer alone. What about everything else? The Mesopotamian payment system had layers of complexity. While beer might be a daily ration, the true backbone of this ration economy was barley. The value of many goods and services was measured in a standard volume of barley, the sila, which was roughly 1 liter. Barley was a useful standard because it was divisible, storable, and something everybody needed, so it always had value. So, if you were that stonemason, you wouldn't be paid in a random assortment of goods. You'd receive a calculated amount of barley, bread, and beer, based on your skill and the days you worked. You could then use that barley directly. Need fish? You'd measure out a set amount of barley. Need a new pot? More barley. Because its value was widely understood, it functioned much like a currency. How could anyone possibly keep track of all this? This is where another Mesopotamian invention becomes critical: writing. The entire system was managed by a class of highly trained professionals called scribes. From a young age, aspiring scribes would attend a tablet house, or aduba, to endure a long and difficult education in cuneiform. They learned not just writing, but mathematics, accounting, and administration. These scribes were the support, the accountants, and the hour department of the ancient world, all rolled into one. They sat at the gates of temples and palaces, using a reed stylus to press wedge-shaped marks into soft clay tablets. They recorded every single transaction, every ration paid, every measure of barley received, every bit of wool allocated to weavers. Museums around the world now hold hundreds of thousands of these cuneiform tablets. We have wage lists, receipts for livestock, detailed production quotas, and labor contracts. These tablets weren't just records. They were the institutional memory of the entire economy. They helped ensure the system was predictable and, most importantly, trustworthy. Based on these incredible records, let's try to reconstruct a day in the life of a worker. We'll call him Ilu. Ilu is a carpenter, hired to help build a new storehouse for the city temple. His day starts at dawn. He works alongside hundreds of others: bricklayers, plasterers, and laborers. Foremen, directed by a master scribe, oversee the project, making notes on a clay tablet about who is present. At the end of a grueling workday, Ilu and his fellow workers line up. A scribe sits at a table near several large baskets of bread loaves and clay jars of beer. As each worker's name is called, the scribe makes a mark on his tablet, and the worker receives his daily pay: a few loaves of bread and a jug of beer. This is enough to feed him for the evening. Once a month, Ilu gets his main wages. He goes to the temple's main storehouse, a massive mud brick complex buzzing with activity. He states his name to another scribe, who checks it against a larger ledger tablet, then instructs the storehouse workers to measure out Ilu's monthly portion of barley. Ilu now has his salary. He takes some of the barley home for his family to grind into flour. The next day, he might take a small bag of it to the local market. He could trade some for a few dried fish, some for a bundle of onions from a farmer, and a little more for oil from a merchant. His work was converted into a standard unit of value: barley. And that value was then converted into the specific goods his family needed. It was a complex dance of labor, accounting, and trade, all happening without a single coin. For larger transactions, or for long-distance trade, merchants did use a different standard: silver. It wasn't minted into coins with a king's face on them, but was carried as coils or rings that were weighed on scales for each transaction. Wage standards could vary, but some texts mention a skilled worker's labor being valued at about 1 shekel of silver, roughly 8.3 grams, per month. So while the average worker dealt in barley day to day, a standardized precious metal was already setting the stage for the future of money. The Mesopotamian system reveals a powerful truth about what money really is. Money isn't just about coins or paper. It's about trust, information, and a shared agreement on value. The Mesopotamians created a system where labor could be converted into a standardized, storable, and exchangeable form of value, be it beer, barley, or a mark on a clay tablet. The scribes who recorded these transactions were validating a promise: the promise that your work had worth and that this worth would be honored by society. That 5,000-year-old receipt for beer isn't just a historical curiosity. It's a powerful reminder of this ancient idea. The technology has changed, from wet clay to digital bits, but the fundamental principle is the same. Your paycheck is a modern version of that ancient promise, a record of value built on a system of trust, first invented thousands of years ago in the cradle of civilization. If you enjoy digging into the surprising origins of the world around us, Make sure to subscribe and hit the bell for more explorations into our ancient past. Thanks for watching.